Welcome everyone to our January webinar titled, There's a Grant for That. Today we'll learn more about resources available through an easy-to-use system that includes, among other things, grants and scholarship information. Before we get started though, let's go over a few housekeeping tips. All of your phone lines are muted, and you can unmute your phone to ask questions at the end of the presentation. You can also mute your phone then back after you ask your question, or you can ask questions through the chat box. Today, if you have questions while we're talking about the library, you are welcome to use the chat box to ask your questions then. You'll also receive the link to the recording and the slides by email, and we hope that you will provide some feedback at the end of the program. Today, I'm very happy to announce our speakers for this program. We have Jerome Bailey, and he's the Associate Director of Patient and Family Engagement for the ESRD National Coordinating Center, which is also known as the NCC. Mr. Bailey has been instrumental in forging new pathways for patients to remain connected in the Virtual Learning and Action Network and providing multiple avenues for patients to share their perspectives. Kim Bittner is the Associate Director of Patient and Family Engagement for the ESRD NCC. Ms. Bittner leads patient and family engagement efforts by collaborating with ESRD networks and community stakeholders through person-centered partnerships with renal patients and their family members. And Dawn Edwards, she's a patient legacy subject matter expert with the ESRD National Patient and Family Engagement Learning and Action Network and the ESRD Network 2 IPRO ESRD Network of New York. Ms. Edwards is also the CEO of the New York State CKD Champions, which is a support group for patients living with or affected by kidney disease. At this point, I'd like to turn the program over to Kim. Kim?
Thank you, Cassie. Thank you for inviting the National Coordinating Center to share the resources of the ESRD NCC Patient Grant Library. We are excited to share this resource with you and dialysis patient citizens. Today we are going to discuss grant and fundraising opportunities for kidney patients and individuals impacted by kidney disease, explain the resources of the Patient Grant Library, and finally you will hear from someone who is using the Patient Grant Library. Joining us with this presentation is Dawn Edwards. As Kathy introduced her, Dawn is a subject matter expert with the National Patient and Family Engagement Learning and Action Network, which we abbreviate NPFE-LAN. She is going to share her experiences with using the ESRD NCC Patient Grant Library and how she is using this resource as a patient and an individual who is running a support group in her community. Before we get started, think about the following questions and how you might use the ESRD NCC Patient Grant Library. Do you have an idea for a product or service that would benefit others living with kidney disease? Do you need funding to start a creative project? Have you thought about researching for support to go back to school? Well, there's a grant for that, and the ESRD NCC Patient Grant Library has the resources to help you find it. There are grants and funding sources for all kinds of ideas, big and small. Some grants are awarded based on specific talents or skills such as writing or art, while others are awarded to support ideas for providing a public service, such as kidney disease education. There are also grants available only to specific populations or communities, such as small business startup grants for women and minorities. Applying for a grant doesn't need to be hard. The ESRD NCC Patient Grant Library has more educational resources to help you through the process. There are links that provide resources for writing proposals, creating budgets, and submitting applications. You can also get step-by-step instructions on how to apply for a government grant by clicking on the How to Apply for Grants link. We won't have time to take you through all the sections. However, based on feedback we have received from patients and family members, we like to share some of the popular pages with you. The ESRD NCC Patient Grant Library has sections dedicated to crowdfunding and social media, emergency grants, fraud awareness, government grants, nonprofit grants, scholarships, unique or talent-based grants, and also offers education and information about preventing fraud. I'd like to now turn the call over to my colleague Jerome Bailey, who will start the tour.
Thank you, Kim. The first page of the Patient Grant Library we are going to share with you is the Browse a Catalog of Grants. Some websites let you look through long lists of grants. Thousands of grants offered for a variety of interests or needs are available. Find a grant that meets your needs, whether it's artistic, research, or community-based. A fee or subscription may be required to access details. Websites that provide lists of grants for a fee may be accessed for free. Your local library may have a paid subscription with a public login that you can use. Check your local public library for access to these resources. When disasters happen, people with kidney disease have special health needs to meet. Emergency grants can pay for things like transportation, medication, and/or food to help you meet those needs. Some are available only for specific issues or only once a year. A social worker may need to sign the paperwork. Check the social worker on your treatment team before starting an application. The ESRD NCC Patient Grant Library can also help you find organizations like the American Kidney Fund, which has a grant to help pay for treatment-related costs, such as health insurance premiums, prescription medications, or transportation. When submitting any type of grant, you'll want to review the criteria and instructions before completing the application forms. Each organization has its own requirements, and it's important to follow the guidelines so your application doesn't get rejected just for not following the rules. Scholarships are available to people with specific qualities and goals. A few examples include learning new skills or taking a college course. The scholarship resources listed in the ESRD NCC Patient Grant Library applies to kidney transplant recipients, donors and their families, caregivers, dialysis patients, and anyone living with chronic kidney disease at any age, or stage for that matter. The bottom screenshot highlights the listing of scholarship resources. A few examples include the Kidney Transplant Dialysis Association and the Kidney and Urology Foundation, which offer scholarships to kidney patients and members of their immediate families for college or to learn a new job skill. Grants may be offered by your local and state government or by the federal government. They usually help fund projects that benefit the economy, public services, and education. Most of them are for universities, researchers, and nonprofit organizations. However, some may accept applications from individuals. Read the requirements and see if one of these might apply to you.
When searching for resources or opportunities, it's important to be careful and alert when providing personal information. To help you, there's a section about avoiding fraud and scams. For example, reminding users to be wary of sites that promise free money for a small fee. Applying for a grant should always be free. In addition to resources for reporting fraud and fraud prevention tips, there's a section about how to use the internet safely. The tutorials in this section are designed to help you better understand internet language, common privacy terms, and scams that could threaten your safety. A few other pages we like to quickly touch base on include crowdfunding and social media, grants for nonprofits, and unique or talent-based grants. The funding options we discussed earlier were more traditional sources. The ESRD NCC Patient Grant Library also offers information for alternative funding sources like crowdfunding and social media. If those funding options are new to you, resources are provided on creating a crowdfunding campaign, as well as education on how to build a presence on Facebook, Twitter, Snapchat, and more. The Grants for Nonprofit page is ideal if you already have a nonprofit or are making plans to start one. This page offers a list of possible grants available to 501c3 organizations. This section also provides several resources to help with applying for a nonprofit grant, including writing tips, how to find a grant, and funding hints. The Unique or Talent-Based Grants page highlights grants that apply to people of certain community or people with creative talents. Based on your background, hobbies, or interests, there may be grants to support your unique projects. This page also offers resources for business startup grants and art grants. As a reminder, and as Jerome mentioned earlier, it's helpful to plan ahead when going after a grant. One way to do that is to review the criteria and instructions before completing the application forms. Each organization has its own requirements, and it's important to follow the guidelines so your application doesn't get rejected just for following the rules. It is now my pleasure to introduce Dawn Edwards. Dawn is a subject matter expert with the NCC and has provided her perspective to enhance multiple projects and initiatives. Dawn reviewed the ESRD NCC Patient Grant Library when it was first developed and continues to use it as a resource for her personal searches. Dawn, would you like to share your experience with using the Patient Grant Library?
Okay, can you hear me now?
We have you, Dawn.
Okay, great. Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you so much for inviting me to participate in this webinar. It's my pleasure to share some of my experiences with you with reviewing this and using this resource. As Jerome and Kim stated, this resource is really cleverly designed and categorized to help patients to find money that they need to help us to reach our goals, which is really great. The resource in and of itself is really categorized according to some of your basic needs. For example, research, education, community activities, medical bills and personal needs, and for a business startup. So a lot of patients never even thought about applying for a grant. I know we have financial needs, and we try to make it the best way that we can, but knowing that there's this resource out here that can give us help is really promising, and it can help us to really get some things started that we've always thought about but just didn't know how to go about doing it. So it's a great opportunity using this resource to apply for money to help you start up a business or help you pursue all types of goals and endeavors. There's links on there for all kinds of additional resources so that you can learn about grants and how to apply for them. As an advocate myself, I use the library regularly to resource funding opportunities for one of the organizations that I belong to, the KPAC. And we are looking for money to help further our goal of developing materials and resources for, to distribute throughout the kidney community to help patients understand kidney disease and to help them manage the disease better. So I spend a lot of time on the grant resource looking for grants that meet our specific criteria. So if you're a part of an organization, it may have a 501c3, which is a tax exemption, or it may or may not. You may be a grassroots organization. Grant money can help you further your work and fulfill your organization's mission. So I have a couple of tips to help you use the library. The first one is to really be specific about what it is that you're searching for. If you need money to pay for medical bills or for personal needs, then you want to make sure that you go to the appropriate link for your specific needs. You wouldn't want to look for government grants to help you get money to pay for some medical bills. Just like Kim and Jerome said, and this is one of the most important parts, and it'll save you a lot of time, you have to take time to read the eligibility requirements thoroughly. These applications and the criteria can be pretty lengthy. Sometimes there's a lot of technical terms, and it does require you to take a lot of time and have a lot of patience. And you may not find a resource immediately, but don't get discouraged. Just keep at it, and if you get tired, just put it down and go back to it again later. So some of the sites ask you to join or pay a monthly fee, and they'll help you narrow down your search. And they'll also send you possible resources based on your search criteria. But you should always be wary of that, because this can be costly, and they'll automatically debit your checking account or your credit card account for these monthly fees. And I just definitely don't suggest this as an option. There may be hidden fees that you don't know about. So you're better off using the provided search engines on the individual sites to find that possible money to apply for. And like Kim and Jerome said, sometimes you may be able to find a subscription at your local library for some of these grant resources. So just to give you an example, if you're a musician and you're looking for money to pay for a recording of your music, or you're looking for studio time, or you're an artist and you want to replenish your art supplies, you want to make sure that you specifically search for art supplies, or you want to look for money for music studio, or you want to be as specific as possible, because what will happen is they'll give you hundreds of grants remotely related to the subject that you're looking for, and you can end up spending hours, days, and weeks just trying to drill down to the specific topic that you're looking for. So if your organization wants to provide community health education for kidney disease awareness, like mine, you want to search for public health education. There are plenty of state and regional grants with money to provide education and awareness on for a specific region. For example, if you live in New Jersey, you may want to look for New Jersey Health Education State grants, or you want to look for your specific state or region. I've seen a lot of resources for the Northwest or Northeast. So you really have to be specific and be patient. There are a lot of special links for tax-exempt organizations, but again, if you're a grassroots organization, there's money out there to help you as well. And for national organizations, that's a little bit tricky, because some grants, like I said, only serve a specific region, a state, a gender, or a specific type of population. So you have to make sure that you read everything thoroughly. So the KPAC, which is one of the groups that I serve on, is a national 501c3. So my search generally consists of topics like kidney disease education or community health. I like to look on a couple of specific sites. I check usagrants.gov, because those are government grants, and they tend to cover the entire country, and they have a tendency not to be regional. Grant Gopher is another site that I use regularly. They list grants and money donated and contributed from private foundations and businesses who contribute to healthier society or to community health and welfare. So some of these grants, though, require you to be really creative and interpret if it can suit your needs, by the link that that the grant is titled under. So you just want to be really, really careful about being specific so that you don't waste your precious time. And if you do find a possibility, save it or write it down. If you leave the site, you may never find that resource again. And another one of my tips is to get a team. Don't try to do it yourself. The more eyes that you have, the better, because you'll definitely get tired looking all by yourself. And if you make sure that you articulate everything that needs to be filled out in the application so that your application won't be rejected. And finally, I just say be optimistic. You may find a resource right away, and you may be like me, looking, and it may take you months to find something that's just right for you. So be prepared to do a lot of reading and, take your time, but be encouraged because there's lots of money out there for you. So good luck to everyone, and thank you so much for your time and attention.
Thank you, Dawn, for sharing that great perspective. We appreciate everything you've done with the library and for you taking time on this webinar and sharing your thoughts. At this time, we like to ask if anyone has any questions. If you can use the chat to share your questions with us, we'll read them and provide you with some insight. So we have one question that we received. Do grant rewards affect Medicaid eligibility? It's a great question. Thanks for asking. For that, we would recommend to always check with your social worker. That is something that you should look into if you do happen to, receive a grant, just to double check if it will affect Medicaid eligibility. It looks like we have another question. Is it possible for a person to receive a grant for a transplant? That's kind of a broad question. There are several sections in the patient grant library that do talk about different resources related to transplant, different organizations. So you could look at different organizations within the patient grant library that discuss resources related to transplantation. There's also within the scholarship, if you've received a transplant, to receive scholarship if you're interested in going back to school, or if you have children who are interested in going to school. So there's scholarships.
So most of the grants that I've come across related to transplantation cover the costs some of the costs associated with transplantation, such as prescription drugs or transportation. Some may even cover aftercare, housing aftercare. So it just depends on the grant. Again, we would advise that you look at many of the kidney-related grants and see what they offer.
And thanks, Jerome. And as Dawn talked about when she shared her experience, you really sometimes have to kind of look at what each grant provides, and sometimes it does take a little bit of time when you're doing your research because there are so many grants out there, and it just takes time to research for what it is exactly that you are looking for. But again, great question, and thank you for asking. We have another question. I am at a clinic that has been providing home hemodialysis for the last 10 years. However, they do not have the basic equipment necessary to facilitate proper home hemodialysis travel. They do not have a carrying case for airline travel at the clinic. I want to see if I can apply for a grant on behalf of my clinic so they can obtain the carrying case for our home hemodialysis machine. that would positively affect several home hemodialysis patients. That's a great idea. Definitely double check with your clinic to make sure that's something that they want to do. And one section you could take a look at is the grants and fundraising. There may be an organization within there that your needs would qualify, and we suggest that you double check what their requirements are. I'm not sure if you work for a nonprofit organization, but just double check, as we had stated earlier, to see what their requirements are.
And there are also home dialysis organizations like Home Dialyzers United that may be able to steer you in the right direction when it comes to fundraising for a travel case for the machine. And I know Next Stage also has a peer connection group that you may be able to reach out to see if they can help you with something specific like that.
Great suggestion, Jerome. We have another question in the chat. Do these grants apply to pediatric facilities as well? The grants may not specifically apply to pediatric facilities. Most of the grants that we've been looking at that are within the library are to individuals. Within our scholarship section, there are opportunities for pediatric individuals to apply for a scholarship if they want to go to school or to go to college. I would encourage you to take a look at all the different sections there to see if possibly you could find something that would be of assistance to you for the goals of what you're searching for within your facility.
And Kim, if I could jump in for a second, you know, when you have to be creative when you search as well, because the person just asked about pediatric facilities, and it all depends on what it is that you're looking for that pediatric facility. Maybe you want to start an initiative where the pediatric patients can do art on dialysis, or then you would want to look for art programs for disabled children. So it may not specifically say pediatric dialysis, but you know, you would have you have to be kind of open to interpret some of the criteria of what the grant is giving that money for.
That's a great point, Dawn. Thank you for sharing that. And someone asked in the chat the exact website to go to. We do have that on another slide. Our exact website is, we're sharing that now, and that is the ESRD NCC.org/patient grant library. So we encourage you to visit that. We were also in the chat, someone's asking, will we constantly update will you constantly update of new programs learned? And yes, we are always looking to add new grants, new scholarships, new opportunities. So if anyone comes across a new grant, please feel free to share it with us. We also ask you, if you obtain a grant through the Patient Grant Library, please let us know. We'd like to help celebrate your successes as well. We have another question in the chat. I am over 50, now disabled with ESRD, and I am on a transplant list. I am able to provide specialized IT consulting from home. What I am interested in is getting a scholarship for educational purposes to expand my skill set. Am I correct that I could find, apply for, and be considered for grants through the site you are promoting? Yes, that is correct. Within this site, there are several areas that you might be interested in visiting. One would be possibly the scholarship area. There are scholarships to go back to school, to gain a new skill set. I definitely encourage you to take a look at the website and to peruse it, take a look at the different sections and see what might work for you. Dawn, you talked about a lot of the different sections. Is there anything that you would like to add?
Yes, I was just going to say under the scholarship section, there's a specific tab right for dialysis patients that you can start your search there. And then I was just going to echo what you said for the unique and talent-based grants. You can really find some really interesting resources on there. I saw something, they had grants for people who were left-handed. So it's phenomenal. The searching can be endless.
We're going to take one more question in the chat. The last one we have is, there are several kidney and dialysis seminars throughout the country, some of which I have saved to travel to, but I cannot afford to travel to all the seminars or conferences I would like to attend. Are there grants that will help me with costs? It is only through these seminars and conferences that I have been able to expand my knowledge on kidney and dialysis resources and then return to my local clinic and educate patients as well as social workers about these resources.
Travel and going to these conferences and everything, that is such a great part of getting education so that you can share with your fellow patients. As far as a specific grant just for travel and education, I haven't found any resources for that. However, when you join organizations such as the AAKP or the NCC or your local ESRD network and other patient organizations, a lot of times, sometimes you can win a scholarship to events. A lot of the conferences, they do have scholarships that you can apply right on their individual website and request to be sponsored to receive a trip to attend the conference. So I don't know about the grant resource specifically, but you should always look at the website for the conference that you would like to attend and see if they have any scholarships or sponsorships.
So we invite you to visit the ESRD NCC Patient Grant Library at esrdncc.org/patient grant library. Help connect others to this resource and spread the word that the ESRD NCC Patient Grant Library can help find a grant for that. You can also share the ESRD NCC Patient Grant Library on your website with an easy-to-use widget. The widget, link, and how-to instructions are on the Patient Grant Library webpage. This slide includes the contact information for the National Coordinating Center. The NCC is interested in hearing about your success stories with searching and using the Patient Grant Library. We are also interested in hearing from you about any ideas for new content. Thank you for joining us today. We enjoyed sharing the ESRD NCC Patient Grant Library with you.
Thank you, Jerome, Kim, and John, for sharing with us today information about this great resource. And John, we certainly appreciate your personal experience that you added to all of it. Please complete the feedback form about today's presentation, and please join us next month for our webinar on February 27th, Having Your Donor Find You. We'll see you then. Thank you everyone for attending today. Bye.